Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, your dungeon master. This is Behind the Screen. This is where we sit around, we talk about games, we talk about things that we love about gaming, game reviews, game design, new articles, new games, board games, just kind of whatever inspires me to chat about with you guys. We're going to actually be doing in a couple of weeks another campaign clinic. So if you're a member of the Iconic Discord, or if you want to leave a message on this episode, you can submit a question and we'll talk about it on stream. Thursday, we're going to be talking about beauty and gaming, and then hopefully next week I will have some Crucible of Realms surprises to show off. So, we are going to be looking at something today that is kind of cool. So, I've mentioned my love of Lovecraft. I love the Dunwich Horror. I love At the Mountains of Madness. I enjoyed reading his fiction, but to be honest, I was never a big Call of Cthulhu gamer. In high school, I had a buddy who was a Call of Cthulhu keeper, and he was sort of an elitist. He would run other games just to show you how they were nothing but murder hoboing. Didn't matter what you played, what he ran. If you were not playing, if it wasn't Call of Cthulhu, his whole point was to browbeat you with the fact that you weren't playing Cthulhu, and this is why games end in murder and violence, which is kind of strange to me. So every time I say it, you guys are going to have massive sanity loss here, certified Turganic. But I had fallen in love with Palladium fantasy, and there's a lot of Lovecraftian horror in Palladium fantasy with the great old ones. So I was fine. I read my Lovecraft and I brought it out in Palladium fantasy. But as Chaosium was kind of coming back into my awareness, with Moon Design kind of coming around, Glorantha, RuneQuest was coming back. They had this big Kickstarter for this massive 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu. Yes, Beyond the Supernatural was a great game as well. And Nightbane. We should just talk about Nightbane sometime, because Nightbane is great. But that is neither here nor there. Interestingly enough, it was originally called Night Spawn, and I think Palladium got a cease and desist order from Todd McFarlane. Anyway, so I had been listening to the good friends of Jackson Elias, a Call of Cthulhu podcast that I love. I'll put a link in the show notes to them. And, Paul Fricker, Scott Dorward, and Matt Sanderson they're the hosts of the podcast. And I found it because I just wanted to learn more about horror gaming. And then we have this thing of, I kept mentioning the new edition of Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, and they were the designers on it. So I lucked out. The Kickstarter had languished in backer kit, and I was able to buy into the 7th edition of Call of Cthulhu. I bought the whole thing that was out at the time. And remember, I'm going into this with really my only experience with Call of Cthulhu were several games in high school, and then the sort of deep understanding that Palladium is basically Call of Cthulhu merged with D&D. So I read through the Keeper's book, I read through the Investigator's Handbook, fell in love with the system. It harkened back to my RuneQuest days. I loved the art. I loved the fact that they put the Dunwich Horror as the example story, because right, you actually have an investigator doing something. And it was Chaosium, and it was the Moon Design guys, and it eventually would be the Moon Design guys, and I wanted to support them. And so the very first Call of Cthulhu adventure I ever ran, this kind of ties in with our discussion of the Tatooine Manhunt, is this book right here. This is Nameless Horrors. 6 reasons for fearing the unknown. And it is 6 small adventures that specifically were designed not to reference the mythos creatures or the mythos entities. Because one of the problems that we have in gaming is that the first time we meet something, we don't know what it is, and it's terrifying. The 7th, the 70th, 170th time we fight something, oh, it's a Shuggoth. Oh, I know what an orc can do. Oh, an Odiug, sure. Ooh, a beholder. Okay, everybody, this is how we fight it. This is what we do. That fear of the unknown goes away. Padre said here that out of the 5e was the notion that the official game of the American Bar Association was Call of Cthulhu. Yes, and I don't know if you guys know this, but the #1 TTRPG in Japan isn't D&D. It's Call of Cthulhu. I'll just let that one rest where it is. So Nameless Horrors. I loved these. They were unique. They are, well, not were, they are. They're unique stories that are very Lovecraftian without referencing Migo, Shuggoths, Haster, which is really, Chambers, but... And so I ran, my first 2 adventures that I ever ran in Call of Cthulhu were actually A Message of Art and The Amaranthine Desire. So, flash forward from, let's see, where is this? When was this published? 2015 to today, almost a decade later. And so this book was great. It still holds up. I mean, it's 224 pages, black and white. Some of the relationship maps are a little clunky. Some of the art is very black and white and sketchbook style. Well, lo and behold, Chaosium reached out and said, hey, would you like to do a review of our new book that's coming out? I was like, sweet, yeah, I'd love to. And to my surprise and actual delight, they are putting out a new version of Nameless Horrors. Full color throughout, kind of bringing it up to the art standards. I mean, there's still black and white pieces, but it is a more colorful version of this book. And they did some updates to the adventures. They didn't really change the adventures at all. They just kind of tweaked them, smoothed some things out. Gave it a brand new cover, and it's going to be, instead of being a soft cover book, I think it was the only soft cover book that came with the original Kickstarter. Everything else was hardcover. This now will be a hardcover book. And I'm going to pick this up because, well, it's beautiful, and because I have a completionist issue. So yeah, let's just talk a little bit about this book. So this is Nameless Horrors, 6 adventures, again, for fearing the unknown. The first one is the Amaranthine Desire, which is a great adventure that I sort of stole very heavily from for our Torg game in a rush. If you know, if you guys watched the Horseman game, you know that they were stuck in a time loop on a train. So without going too far into details, because again, if the whole point of this book is fear of the unknown, I don't want to spoil and reveal the unknown for you if you get the chance to play through it, or if you want to read it for the first time and run it. But it's an 1895, so Cthulhu by Gaslight era, about witches and about... this is the art for this chapter. It involves a witch burning and an attempt to understand what happened in the past and help save, well, yourselves and the town of Dunwich. Not that Dunwich. And they kind of talk about how the fictional Dunwich is based off of the Dunwich, or named after the Dunwich actually in England. Thank you, Padre. I was very happy with that. I was also very happy with that train adventure because I did not tell my players that it was going to be a time loop. So when I brutally murdered all of them by the second car, um, there was actual shock and actual fear and actual anger at what was going on. And then the time loop started and they all kind of stutter stepped. There were two false steps. One, wait a second, how are we all dead? Wait, why are we alive? Wait, what is going on? And I think it played out well with that group. So the other thing they did is they cleaned up the relationship maps. The relationship maps in the original one were good. I mean, I'm not saying they were bad. They were a little difficult to read, and they were landscape, which was kind of difficult. I mean, you kind of kept having to turn the book around. So these are colorful. They are color coded, which are helpful, and they just give a better flow of how everyone in the stories interact. So the next one is, and this is my favorite one. I am a sucker for Pygmalion stories. This is something that Landauer at Peg and I think it was Landauer who and I were talking about it. I love them. And so this is another Gaslight era about artists who are possessed by muses. And so it touches a little bit on the King in Yellow, but not entirely. Kind of similar themes without retreading old ground. You got a couple of adventures set in the 1920s. This one, I love this piece of art. It kind of feels a little Night of the Living Dead-y to me, like old Romero Night of the Living Dead. You've got Some Fell on Stony Ground. That's this one. Mysteries of Science, things starting to act strange. Again, I don't want to give away too much. Just, I hope you can tell from the excitement in my voice, being able to reread these adventures and go, man, I want to go back and revisit these stories because they did a great job with them. And I think the other thing that's unique about this book is that the good friends of Jackson Elias, and Mike Mason was on this as well, these were some of the first adventures written by the design team. So it kind of shows you what they thought, at least at the start of 7th edition, what they thought was important. Oh yes, Padre, it is nightmarish. It is. It also kind of ties into a couple, or at least one late 1800s Christian splinter group, where you started getting a lot of the weird, almost Gnostic mystical traditions that kind of were in resurgence. So there's a lot going on in that story. It is nightmarish. It is wonderful. It is a delight of a story. It is probably the adventure I've run most for Call of Cthulhu 7th edition. And the one that I just keep readapting because good adventures, man, good adventures are like good stories. We see the same themes coming up and up again and again because they resonate with us. Then there is the bleak prospect. We're kind of in the 1920s, 1930s era, so kind of core Call of Cthulhu. This is a small town kind of under assault. I love this piece. Has very, how do I want to put this? It's got very Yog-Sothoth-y, Yog-Sothoth-y feel to it. But again, their goal was to provide something brand new for keepers. It's a goal that I love that they picked up, and I don't know if this happened in earlier editions, because 7th edition is what I came to Call of Cthulhu in. But the idea that all of the spells have these very generic names. Because the whole point is that you're supposed to retitle them so that players don't know exactly what they do until they cast them. That's brilliant. It's one of the things I love about the Gumshoe Trail of Cthulhu, where they give you 3 or 4 or 7 or 8 different ways that you could reimagine Migo or ghouls or Haster or Cthulhu himself. Then the last 2 adventures are modern day. The Moonchild. Now this one of the things they did add, I don't know that they had this in the original. Let's just take a look here. They did not have this in the original, but in the updated one, they give you kind of a, hey, just be aware that these are definitely intended for it's Call of Cthulhu modern, or it's Call of Cthulhu and it's horror. So there is a level of maturity that we need to approach a lot of these stories with. This one is definitely the one that disturbed me the most. Someone forced to make a deal for their child's life, and how that changes everything. When I first read this, my son was 3. Now he's going to be 11. So a lot has changed, but still, this story hits a little close to home. Great adventure. And last but not least is we have a full-blown cult story, which it would not be Call of Cthulhu without some good cults. And so the space between deals with cults in Hollywood. Not too far-fetched. And so this is Nameless Horrors. If you have not played Call of Cthulhu and are looking at getting into it, this is the book of adventures to start with. It's filled with horrific scenarios that are deeply tinged and seeped in the mythos without having any mythos attached to it. So it allows your players, even if they are familiar with Lovecraft, and at this point, who really isn't? Pathfinder has the Lovecraft entities in it. You can be a warlock of Cthulhu in Dungeons and Dragons. This allows you to tap into what Lovecraft said was the oldest and greatest fear of mankind. Fear of the unknown. So they did a great job with it. And again, like I said, I'm picking this up even though I have the book. This will go on my shelf of copies, things that I'm holding on to because they are part of the set, but not necessarily one that I want to use a lot. Looking forward to seeing the physical hardcover book in my hands later this year. It's one of the things that the Moon Design guys did when they came on board and became Chaosium. They upped the quality of every book that's printed. Every RuneQuest book that comes out is better looking than the last RuneQuest book that came out. All of the covers, gorgeous. I think my favorite cover of a role-playing book in the last 5 or 6 years was Wicked City, the Berlin supplement, with just the Art Deco, and then I'll have to share an image of this. It's wonderful. Yes, Padre, it is about the atmosphere. There was a strange novel, and if I can find it, I'll put the link in the show notes, that a buddy loaned me, and it ended up being a Lovecraftian story, but you didn't know that till the end. It was this story about a man who moves into a apartment complex in LA, and the rent is unbelievably cheap. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of Lost in the fact that there's a main narrative going through and a mystery they're trying to uncover about the apartment complex, but that it keeps interweaving, oh, this person's now talking with the person in 2A. Now we're going to go into they're going to tell how they came here. So you get these flashback stories, and then it just goes off the rails and becomes Lovecraftian fiction. If I can figure out the name of that book, I definitely need to put that into the show notes. Additionally, if you like D100 games and you like the mechanics of Call of Cthulhu and RuneQuest, they've just re-released the Gold Book, the basic role-playing system on DriveThruRPG as print on demand or as PDF. So you can get what was the kind of generic D100 system sort of back in print again. It is the Peter Klein story. Tinker, you get a no prize. That is spot on. So that is my look at Nameless Horrors. Again, if you are a Call of Cthulhu fan, the stories are very well written. You're going to love the adventures. If you are a Call of Cthulhu keeper and want something new and you don't have this book, go ahead and get it. If you already have Nameless Horrors, not that much has changed. You get some better art, you get some better relationship maps, a couple of tweaks to the adventures and edits, but for the most part, it's the same content. But I believe this book is out of print. So your chance to get this book, just buy the new one. It should be up on Chaosium's website here soon, and I look forward to, like I said, when I get it, I may do an unboxing when I get my big Chaosium order in later this summer and just show it off if I have it. So next time on Behind the Screen, we will definitely be covering beauty and gaming. It may be a little bit longer one. I'm going to kind of walk through one of the papers I wrote on this subject. And then tonight we have the second part of our Pan Pacifica electric slide adventure, where we're showing off some of the new fun stuff in Pan Pacifica. We'll see what happens. It could be part 2 of 3, or it could be part 2 of 2. It all depends on the players. And then soon we're going to be launching our Crucible of Realms game on the Iconic Production channel, and all of my players are chomping at the bit for this game to start. I'm looking forward to showing some of the trailer that I put together, looking forward to showing the new overlay that we're going to be using for the stream. Get your feedback on it and go from there. So that's it, guys. That's all I had for Behind the Screen today. And again, thank you to all of our patrons, all of our supporters, everybody who leaves a comment and subscribes and likes. We are getting close to our 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. And again, when that happens, we're giving away a set of the Fading Suns role-playing books. So, I am too, Padre. It's going to be a little nerve-wracking as I kind of walk through some of these topics, but hopefully, I don't want to give away too much about my paper, but still share kind of the core ideas. We're going to be talking about Tolkien. We're going to talk a little bit about Lewis. We're going to talk a lot about Greg Stafford. So that'll be on Thursday. Hope to see you all tonight for Electric Slide Part 2. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming, and I will see you all on Thursday. Have a good one.